I'm Sarah,
And I'm Alec.
and this is Sarah Off Stage, where we talk about theater, events, and experiences in Southern California and beyond. We got to see Coriolanus. Coriolanus was put on by the Independent Shakespeare Company, also known as Indieshakes. We got to see it in Griffith Park at their outdoor theater at the old LA Zoo. So, how familiar were you with Coriolanus before you saw the show?
I knew that it was just one of the many plays of William Shakespeare, but I knew nothing about the plot or any of the characters besides the title character. So I was basically going in blind.
Have you seen Shakespeare performed a lot before this, or was this also like a newer experience for you?
I would say a handful of times, mainly when I was younger, because I kind of grew up in the theater with my grandpa being like a theater director and stuff. So I got to see some performances of Shakespeare, both from the school that he was working at and like actual performances that he would take me to.
Similarly, about Coriolanus, I wasn't super familiar with it. I knew a couple characters from it, and obviously I knew it was a tragedy and that it is involving like Roman politics, but I really didn't know like what would happen, and I didn't know like the details of the play at all. Obviously, in school and growing up, I really enjoyed Shakespeare and read a lot of the work, seen a lot of the work performed in even professional settings. But this is one that like I feel like has evaded me. One thing that I find interesting about Coriolanus is that I feel like the characters are very complex. I think a lot of Shakespearean characters are more complex than what meets the eye initially. But what I liked about this one is that, for example, like Coriolanus's mother, she starts the story when we first meet her bragging about her son's like military like missions and like how he's been wounded in battle and it's so like glorious, and she's like feeling a lot of pride in him. And I don't know, it kind of struck me that, like, by the end of the play, she's forced to, like, beg for peace for Rome, to her son, who she had praised at the beginning for being such a great, like, conqueror, you know? And I think that it kind of speaks to, like, this idea that, oh, from afar, war is, like, this glorious thing, but then when it comes to your doorstep, it's not so glorious anymore, it's horrible, and you're first you're forced to like beg for all your worth just to like prevent it, you know. I feel like it's kind of like a you reap what you sow kind of thing, because she encouraged these behaviors in him, encouraged him to be proud, encouraged him to be like violent, um there's that entire conversation where they're like discussing how like wonderful it is that like the other woman's son like killed like a butterfly or something like that, and they're like, wow, that's incredible. And it's like it shows like a culture of like toxic masculinity and warmongering amongst them, that definitely comes back to bite them later. Even with Coriolanus, I think it's interesting because he is quite proud. We see that he doesn't want to um, be humble to the common people, to the working class people who would be voting for him as consul. But there are also moments where people want to praise him and he denies them that. He doesn't want to be praised. Which again, I think adds to that complexity of character, because like who is he ultimately? Like, is he this person that needed to be taken down, or was he pushed to that, by circumstance? I like that complexity because, I feel like a lot of people would consider him to be an unlikable character almost all the way through the play. But does have these moments where you see that he isn't just prideful and arrogant. There's also, deeper layers to the character. Um, which I think shows the mastery of Shakespeare in crafting interesting characters. The tribunes I thought were also very interesting characters, and also have a lot of complexity because they seem to, want to encourage the will of the people, and they um, recognize the arrogance and pride in Coriolanus. But then, later on, it's clear that they are also trying to use the people for their own gain and maybe don't have the best intentions for the people. It's more of a means to an end for them to, reach their goals of power.
And we see that in the show, like they acquire more and more jewelry and stuff like that as time goes on, showing their growing influence with the people itself, which Coriolanus was essentially told to do because he needs their votes. And it's something that he refused to do, to like bring himself down to do, but it's something they're willing to do, but it's twisted because they're doing it for power as opposed to just doing it for pure humility. In this kind of setting, it was said that like people of status shouldn't be in the marketplace because that's where all the commoners are. But the politicians, the two in the play, regularly go there to make face with all of the people there that they're trying to get in good favor with so that they can exploit them later.
But again, like complex characters,
Exactly.
because we see Agrippa, I believe, is not really able to acknowledge the pride that's clear within Coriolanus, even if he himself has good intentions for Rome. And the tribunes are able to see that pride, but they're hoping to twist things, like you said, to get themselves in power and also to get this person that they don't like out of their way. Because they do say things that are correct, that his pride is a danger and that he doesn't care for the people. But we clearly see that their care for the people is not genuine. But kind of adding to what you were saying about them acquiring jewels across the course of the play. This is obviously a pretty minimalist production, considering it's done in the round and it's just the temporary stage before they finish the construction for their permanent spot. Um, but I felt that despite its minimalism, they were able to still capture the energy that comes with, Roman politics and everything. I don't think that it was a detractor from the show that things were minimalist. I think the costumes were enough. And through like the use of the tribunes, adding more necklaces and rings and an earring as the show goes on, I think that that was a wise choice because it is minimal, but it does show us character. If you're paying attention to things like costumes, then you would be able to see that bit of storytelling as the show goes on. And I was honestly impressed by that. I think you wanted to talk about the step stools.
Yes. Okay. Talking about the step stool specifically, it's used semi periodically throughout, mainly to just be a seat or chair for someone to sit on. But there's one moment where Coriolanus is being led by Agrippa to the market to show off his wounds because he finally relented to do that. And it's a way to get the people on your side, show off your brave battle wounds, and it's a sign of honor. And Agrippa and Coriolanus are stepping on one, stepped on another, and there's three of them, and they move them around to get them to the elevated part of the stage. In that, they have to be very careful, the actors, because they don't want to accidentally step off of the stool. Symbolically, one elevates them above everyone else below them, the common people, because they're in the marketplace. But it also added a different layer because Agrippa and Coriolanus are figuratively stepping delicately, trying to perform this almost game of trying to gain people's votes. And Coriolanus doesn't want to be there. Anytime he has to deal with actual like important people, he gets told that he needs to chill. So he's trying to hold back his I don't even know if it's embarrassment. It's
Yeah, embarrassment because he truly believes that he's above even being around these people. He says multiple times that he doesn't want to be near their like breath, like it defiles him, you know.
so both people are kind of stepping around this delicate situation that is reflected in the actions and the props of that specific scene. And I thought, even though it was minimalist, that that was very interesting thing to do and a good direction on the director's part.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I feel like these small elements, like the step stools or, the jewelry of the tribunes, especially the step stools, because like you said, it works on a deeper level. It gives us more information about the characters and about the situation, even though they're not using a lot of like props. And that type of blocking where, he's moving the stools so Coriolanus doesn't have to step near the people, and they have to be careful. I feel like you said, that shows like great direction, in my opinion, from David Melville. And obviously a clear mastery of the material and a deeper understanding of these characters, um, and the situations happening in the play, that he's able to help incorporate these elements, through such minimal production, that gives us more information about the story. So I briefly wanted to touch on also, in the material of the play, just the idea that no matter like what happens, the people, like the working class people, always end up getting the short end of the stick, um, because they're being manipulated and influenced the whole time of people saying, "Oh, well, he's prideful. He doesn't actually care. Did you hear what he said about you?" And they're like influenced to the Tribune's side, and then we see the Tribunes don't actually care about them at all anyway. Um, and like ultimately, it's like these nobles, these upper class patricians are like creating wars, and then ultimately who suffers? It's the working class people. Like their families are killed, like they're widowed, their children die. And for what? Oftentimes it's just the political machinations of like the upper class, who is shown that across the board, um, they don't care very much again until war is at their own doorstep.
Well, they're so entrenched in that mindset. And we even see later in the play when Coriolanus joins the Volscians, who the Romans have been at war with countless times, he gets put in charge of their army. And they bring attention and specifically call attention to the fact that Coriolanus has killed so many soldiers of these just common people, created so many widows and fatherless children, and we don't really find out what they think about that. We only see it in the context of like the upper military rank.
Right, and that's where it's kind of like this, I guess, thing with the upper class and with Coriolanus is that, like, once he switches sides to work with the Volskins, like, I feel like it becomes clear that to him, like his military exploits and everything, it didn't really even matter that much that he was doing it for Rome. He was doing it for himself, which also leads to his pride again. He doesn't care whose side he's on. He just wants revenge on whoever, he perceives wronged him. Spoiler alert, they kill him because he wants to make peace with Rome, but it's too late for that. He's gonna meet his end because he's turning again on these people that he's caused this great suffering to. I guess this kind of shows too, though, like how Shakespeare remarkably can be timely at any time. Like, I think because it deals with such like core concepts of humanity, such as like humility, pride, vengeance, that there are always ways to make it feel relevant directly to our current situation. And I feel like this one, because I wasn't as familiar with it beforehand, I was like almost surprised by how like relevant it feels. Um, and I think that is why, or one of the reasons why, like Shakespeare has lasted this long being produced to this day. And I like that you can set it in pretty much any era or setting that you like because um, the setting typically is more of a backdrop, whether you set it in ancient Rome or modern United States. This one was clearly set still in ancient Rome, but um, you could set it today and the production would still work, you know what I mean? Like you
Yes,
can
yeah.
set it in any era you like, and I feel like there's a way to make it work, which is something I like about Shakespeare. The content doesn't really change, but the setting can. Speaking of the setting change, like we kind of talked about this already, but having it be in the round outside was something I think we both liked because of that connection to past production, like what this
Yeah.
originally would have looked like.
Being from California, it's probably the closest thing that I've gotten to of that experience of having a connection with the actors and almost being a part of the story, having them look directly at you and almost tell you the narration. Or in this particular instance, because it deals with a lot of politicians, the actors were just walking around doing like campaign slogans and stuff of going up to people saying, "Make sure to vote for me." It brought a lot of energy to the production because you also don't know where to look, and you're like, "Oh, there's an actor over there interacting with the audience. There's one over here," and then they meet up in the middle, and then your focus is brought right back to the production.
It gets dark as the show goes on outside, like literally. But the way it's lit up, the audience is also lit up. And I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I think the actors being able to clearly see the audience also helps the audience and actor feed off of each other's energy for the show. Um, because, like you said, you can like see them and see their expressions. And when someone does a soliloquy, which admittedly there's not a ton in this one, but there are audience reactions audibly the way there would have been in Shakespeare's day when this was performed. There was a lot of give and take in his original productions. And I think that's something that can get lost in modern productions is that it's like an active relationship between the audience and actor, especially in something like Shakespeare. Um, and I feel like when the audience is darkened and the actor can't see them, sometimes it can be more challenging to get that energy flowing between the two. But in this kind of setting where it's more casual and there is more of a open invitation to react appropriately, to what's happening in the play, audibly, uh, I think that it adds something special and almost makes it feel a little bit more immersive to be able to interact with the story in that way. It's not a full immersive production, but um, being able to sit with everyone and all of us like, oh, gasp and react to what's happening on stage, I think is important. I will say, even if you're at an outdoor production that's casual, that's free to you, please do respect your fellow patrons, please don't whisper and talk during the show, especially when scenes are going on. And please don't be scrolling brightly on your phone at night in an outdoor theater. It is distracting to other people near you. I understand that it is a more casual environment, and that's okay. But please also just remember that, you know, the actors, the crew, they're putting a lot into this show, and it is disrespectful not only to other audience members, but also to the production itself. As far as acting goes, I mean, honestly, I was impressed across the board. Like I thought every performance was extremely well done. They knew their characters. I think they knew the story well, and something I mentioned to you that I learned from seeing professional productions in the past, especially when I was younger, is that even if you don't have a clear like grasp on like Shakespearean like language and how it's written, um, the true testament to me as to whether someone understands the play and understands their character and understands the language is if I, as an audience member who is less familiar with that language, can still understand the intent and what is being said in the line, even if I don't directly understand every word being spoken. And I never had any trouble understanding what was going on in the scenes.
Yeah, especially for, well, I guess with both of us, because we haven't seen the play before. So even with our different understandings and experience with Shakespeare in the past, like it's still enough of an understanding because the actors know what's going on and they know what to convey just through the cadence of their voice, emphasizing certain words. You can still pick up on the story.
Yeah, I feel like especially with like Indieshakes like goal of, you know, making Shakespeare accessible to a wider audience and performing it, you know, in these productions that are free to attend. I think that it's great that they have such a handle on the material because it'll show people, you know, like you said, a bunch of people had never come before. I'd be curious to know how many of them had never seen or had ever seen Shakespeare before. Um, Maybe they have different familiarity levels with it. Maybe they read it in high school, you know, even. But showing people who maybe have like this impression of Shakespeare that it's like dull or hard to understand or challenging. And I mean, it can be challenging, especially thematically, but I think this production and probably other productions by them show that their level of mastery over the material um, can help audience members that maybe have an unfavorable or even neutral perspective on Shakespeare, that it is accessible and it is fun and it is easy to understand and it is interesting and relevant and worth performing still. And I mean, that makes me excited because I love Shakespeare's work. So I'm really happy that they're able to put these shows on that are free for the public to attend. I hope they get even larger crowds because I think right now ticket prices for shows are so expensive and they're just continuing to get more expensive for so many different, you know, exacerbating reasons. But it makes it, you know, less and less accessible for the average person. You know, like I can't even afford to like go to a lot of these productions because of like the cost, even if I wanted to. But having it be free is so important because they may, you know, start to what, like love the source material and want to discover more about it.
There's a reason that these stories have been able to survive for hundreds of years, and it is that people connect with the work, and the fact that because making it free can just open it up to so many more people.
Yeah, because I mean, like, art shouldn't be gatekept. It should be for everyone. And I think that sometimes it's hard to keep sight of that, when productions need to make money, to stay afloat or, to stay out there. We have less support for the arts right now. So I think that this is such an important mission, which is why I think it's important if you can donate to them that you should, because I want to see this keep going. And I want to see people who have never been able to experience Shakespeare have the opportunity to do so. Um, but yeah, I think it's good. Were there any performances that really stood out to you in this production? I know we both thought across the board, all the performances were great, but any standouts for you?
Obviously, um, Brent Charles as Coriolanus absolutely nailed it. Like we were saying earlier, it's clear even he understood the character and he was able to deliver his lines beautifully in all the right moments. Like you can feel his anger at times when Coriolanus is really frustrated. You can even see it in his face because we were so close. The times where he was meant to be more soft and subdued, you can really see that too. And his line delivery and just acting in general, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like there was so much like nuance to his performance. Like I was so impressed by it. We really see that internal struggle like on his face, especially when his wife comes to him towards the end of the play and his mother comes to him towards the end of the play, asking for um, you know, him to stand down and to save Rome, that he wouldn't be willing to sacrifice his mother, his wife, his son for this vengeance he wants on Rome, for what happened to him. And just seeing that like nuance and that struggle within him, um, that, I think in this production, it's clear that he cares for his wife and loves his wife, and that he is fighting himself with his pride, of whether to let go of it for the sake of them, or to keep going because he doesn't want to look bad. And I think that all these even subtle emotions were just masterfully portrayed through Brent Charles's performance. I was very impressed and would love to see more productions with him in it.
Another great performance was Melissa Chalsma as Coriolanus's mother, and you can feel the different emotions and conflict that go on within her. The pride at the beginning of her son being this great warrior and having so many scars that like he can show off, and then the anger and frustration with the council when he's banished from the city.
I think that Volumnia, like, also at the end there, I think the reason she's able to get through to him is because she understands him almost psychologically. She understands like what's going on, because like she realizes that like crying and things like that are not going to be like what gets through to him. Like there are different avenues in which she can influence him, because we know she already has been manipulating him earlier, um, and she's able to use that to her advantage. I mean, she's very clever, clearly. She's a very smart woman who knows how to play this political game. And I just think it's interesting to watch her arc from using that tactic and those, manipulation tactics. Um, Starting at the beginning of the play to the end, like there's such a difference in how she's using it and what she has to use it for. Um, and I think that's really interesting to watch. I think she has probably one of my favorite arcs in the whole play. And as you said, Melissa Chalsma, incredible um, understanding of the character. I believe she's also going to be directing Comedy of Errors. So that's very exciting to see her in a directing role, which I haven't seen before. And I would be interested to see how she directs a comedy. Yeah, I also wanted to shout out the actors who played the tribunes, Bernardo de Paula and Daniel de Young. I want to shout them out because I think the tribunes are very complex roles, and also because they have a majority of their scenes as just conversations amongst them. There's not a ton of action going on the stage when they have a majority of their scenes, which can sometimes make it a little bit more difficult to either understand what's going on for newer Shakespeare audiences or just keep your attention. But I was like wrapped by their performances. I was extremely impressed. um, I thought they managed to make the language sound so conversational and make it so clear, um, their intentions through what they said, whether we wanted to feel that they were being sarcastic about something or, you know, um, manipulative about something. I thought they were both incredible in those roles. Kind of going to the crew side of things, I'd like to shout out Gary Lennon, who was the costume designer for this production, and Ben On Win, who was the set designer. Um, so impressive work from them, just in a more minimal standpoint of being very effective for what was available to them for the production. David Melville also was the composer and fight choreographer. Something that I know we talked about that we both liked is there are moments in major fights that happen on stage in which it is timed to the music, which I found impressive and fun, and really brought something interesting to the production. The music is very like rock, very, rebellious feeling. I feel like it really added to the energy of the production, and I was very pleased with it. All right, well, would you recommend seeing this production?
100%. It's so good for all the reasons that we just said. It's still running for one more week as of recording, Wednesday through Sunday. If you're able to check it out, definitely do.
Yes, ends July 26th. If you liked our review today, liked hearing what we had to say, there are a few ways you can support us. You can give this video a like, you can subscribe, and you can also follow on Instagram at Sarah, Sara, Offstage, where we're going to be posting reels and pictures of all the things we're up to. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this review. Hope to be doing many more in the future.